All right, so chapter 6, folks. Questions on any of the chapter 6 problems that you would like me to do?
I just have a general question of how do you understand which formula to use because they're so similar when it comes to
Okay.
Can't use that on a piece of paper. Right?
So, one of the things that we did in chapter 6 is sort of dealt with the two separate cases that you work with in percentages more often than not. One of them is when you're dealing with just straight percents. These two formulas, folks, are exactly the same. Okay, there is no difference between the two of them. One of them, the is over of technique, this has the percentages built into the problem so that you don't have to worry about the percentages. The P equals base times rate, portion equals base times rate. Here, the 100 is not cooked into the problem, so you have to be able to bounce back and forth between decimal representation and percentage representation. But these are for problems that are just regular straight percentages, okay? Generally, it's this phrase right here that tells you that this is generally going to be a straight percentage problem. When you read the problem, if the percentage is immediately followed by the word of, this is usually a straight percentage problem. Usually. It's not 100% of the time, so don't automatically always do it. But that's generally one of those quick, easy sorts of things you can look at to say, hey, this is a percentage problem where I'm just going to do some sort of a multiplication or division, no adding or subtracting, okay? All right, now, you may wind up doing some adding or subtracting with these problems if the question says something about 60% of people use seatbelts, and then the question asks, how many people do not use a seatbelt, right? And that's where you have to remember that the whole complement concept, right? If 60% of people use a seatbelt, what percent of them don't?
40.
40 move forward, okay? So you can either do the subtraction to get it from the percentage, or you could potentially do some subtraction on the problem to get from who wears a seatbelt to who does not. So there's where might be some subtraction going on, but it's more geared off of a complement concept instead of a more or less than concept, okay? So these problems, though, where you're using the new equals old plus or minus rate times old, these are the percent increase / decrease. This is when the word that you see after the percentage sign is not of, right? Right? So words that tell you you're going to be doing an addition or subtract, and that's an R, not a V. 60% more, 30% discount, 8% raise, right? These sorts of phrases are the sorts of things that tell you, hey, this is the kind of problem where I do need to think about the new and the old, and I'm either going to add or subtract a percentage of it to get to the new value that I'm looking for. Or you already know what the new value is, but there still has to be some pluses or minuses based on what you have to do to get back to the old. All right? These are just general rule of thumbs, though, So they're not guaranteed to always work that way, but this is that 90% rule. 90% of the time, these things are going to be one of these sorts of new equals old plus or minus rate times old types of problems. Okay? So those are good sort of feeling types of problems. Again, realize there are exceptions, and those you sort of see as we go. So, all right. So how about actual questions on the Chapter 6 homework? A number that you would like me to do. One of them that you're potentially nervous about. Monroe folks, feel free to pipe up if you wish. 66? All right. All right, what does 66 say?
That U.S. Parks reports for 936,995 bankruptcy filings 2014.
What was that number again?
936795.
936795. Okay.
2014.
In 2014? Okay.
There were 310 on Chapter 13 filings. What percent of filings were not Chapter 13?
Okay, so there were how many of them?
310,061.
310,061 Chapter 13s.
Uh-huh.
And so they wanted to say what percent are not Chapter 13?
Yes.
Okay.
Couldn't you do is above with that?
Yeah. So note, folks, it didn't ask what percent more or what percent less or what was the percentage increase or what was the percentage decrease, right? This is a straight percentage problem. This is a PBR problem or an is over of problem, whichever way you want to do it, okay? So, you just have to tell me what's what.
Well, if you do it over is over of, you put 936795 as the of.
All right, good. So if we're going to do, let's do the is over the of, right? So is over of equals percent over 100. The of is the 936,000. Why is that?
Because that's the original amount.
That's the whole.
That's the whole or the total, right? The of is the total number of things that we have. In this case, their total in 2014 was that. What's the is?
31061.
31061. Why is that the is?
Because that's the amount that we know.
Yeah, that's the portion that we know about. And so, what are we missing?
X over 100.
X over 100, exactly. And what do we do to find x, folks? Cross multiply and divide. And again, remember that the cross multiplication and division is always based off of where x is. Since the x is here, that's the multiply. Diagonally across from wherever x is the divide. Okay? Always works like that, depending on where x is, right? So we're going to take these wonderfully nice numbers, 310,061 times 100, and then divide by 936,795.
It's like 0.333333 blah blah. Something. Yeah.
So what did we wind up getting? Somebody give me a number with lots of decimals.
33.09806307307.
Okay.
Thought I did it wrong, so I wasn't sure. So I
Well, let me check because I went to the math lab and she helped me do it wrong.
Now, note. Well, wait. We're not done yet, right? What does this number represent?
The chapter 13.
This is the chapter 13s. What did we ask for?
The not chapter 13.
The not chapter 13s. Now, did it tell you where to round this percentage?
To the 10th.
Tenths?
Yeah. The
Okay.
whole percent.
The whole
Sorry.
percent.
So the whole percent. So technically, what is this?
33.
33%, but this is the chapter 13s. So how do we get the not chapter 13s?
Subtract that
subtract that from 100%, get the complement of 30%, 33%,
67.
so 67% not chapter 13. And note, it's my opinion in this particular problem, folks, that it is way easier to calculate the 33% first and then subtract, as opposed to trying to take the difference between 936,795 and 310,061 to figure out how many of them actually were not chapter 13. But you could have done that, right? You could have done the subtraction of these two numbers first to figure out how many are not chapter 13s, and then figure the percent out to get to the 67. Either way is okay. All right? Not bad? Again, folks, please correct if you had a mistake. And again, if you do these problems differently, folks, that is perfectly fine, okay? If you go about the problem a different way, as long as you got the correct answer, I am a happy man. There are always slight differences the way you get to answers, and don't worry about it if you do it a slightly different way. Just as long as you know that it always works, I'm good. Okay? All right. Another one?
76.
76. All right, what does 76 say?
Due to increase the mailing cost, the new rate will cost publishers $50 million.
New rate is $50 million. Okay.
This is 12.5% more than they paid the previous year. How much did it cost publishers last year? Round to the nearest hundreds.
Find last year. And then technically it said round to hundreds.
Yes.
Note, folks, that if you didn't round to the hundreds, please don't worry about it because it's money. Since it's money, if you rounded it to the penny, I am perfectly happy. Okay? Just whatever. I mean, I would not do this to you on a test. If it were money, I would just say, give me the dollar amount, and you would give me the dollar amount with the pennies, okay? But in theory, we should follow directions, so we will at the end. All right. So, first off, what kind of a problem is this?
Percentage increase.
Yeah, because what's the word that follows the percent? More. And that's the sort of thing you guys need to start getting in the habit of, right? This is an increase problem, right? And now, what I would love for you guys to do, again, you don't have to do this, but I would love it if you would actually write the formula that dictates a percentage increase down for me, okay? You should know this, so it's not like something you have to write down, but it's just nice because the idea is you know two of those. Which two of those variables do you know?
The new and the rate.
The new and the rate, right? Always take the free point stuff first. And what am I going to do with 12.5%?
Convert
Okay,
it.
good. Make sure you make it 0.125. Note, folks, on a test, if this is what you wrote down to this question, you would get 4 out of 10. You don't even have to give me an answer. Right? If this was just all you wrote down, 4. Right? If you leave a question blank, guess how many points I give you? 0. What's the difference between 4 and 0? Do you guys want to throw away 4 points? Please practice this sort of habit on tests, so you can guarantee that you get points. Okay, now here's where we start getting trickier. But yes, you guys were clever here, and you know that the new rate is the 50 million, right? Because that's what the new rate is. It even says so up there, right? It's almost a dead giveaway. So we're looking for the old. What are we going to call old?
X.
Good idea, right? This gets you at least 5. And again, you haven't written any algebra down, you haven't even given me a damn answer, but you are halfway to the right answer, okay? You've done nothing but write down what the question is, and done it mathematically, okay? Now, substitute in, right? So just replace. 50 million equals X plus 0.125x. Again, old is x, substitute accordingly. What is x plus 0.125x?
1.125x.
Alright, good. Again, remember that the number in front of x when it doesn't have one is really a 1. And don't forget you know how to add decimals to it, right? And now what do you do to get that x by itself? Divide by 1.125. And this is the other way that you get smaller numbers, is not through subtraction, but through division. Can somebody give me that awful number?
$44,444,400.
Right? Technically, it keeps going and going, right? Hopefully your calculator doesn't really give you that many numbers. But you know what it's doing, right? The 4s are just going to go over. And then technically you go back to the directions. Where did it tell you to round it to? Hundreds. So theoretically, that's the correct answer, where you round it to the nearest 100. If you put the pennies in there, folks, if you left all the 4s up there, I am okay with the answer. I actually give it to you, okay? So if you left it at 44,444,444 and 44 cents, I still give you the point in homework, okay? Because it's money, and technically money should be rounded to the penny. That's sometimes the directions of the book piss me off. But normally you should follow directions. So if you rounded it, great. If you didn't, in this instance, great too. Okay? But note, this is one of those problems where you kind of have to decide, and carefully decide, did I give you new or old? Adjust accordingly. Okay? Alright, one more?
We try number 86.
86, okay.
The sales tax rate is 8%.
Hang on.
Jim?
Hang on. Okay, now go.
If Jim bought a new Buick and paid sales tax of $1,920, what was the cost of the Buick before the tax?
Can you use is of on that?
Why?
Because you have a percent and a portion.
Yes, exactly. This is an is of. This is a portion equals base times rate problem. This one's a little on the tricky side, right? Because normally when you think tax, what do you think? You think percent increase, right? Because you add the tax to the price to get your final value at the end. That's what you would normally think. But note, this thing is basically saying that 8% of the total will be your sales tax. It didn't say that you need to add the money together, right? It's just saying that the tax is 8% of the total. And here's what the tax is, all right? So this one is a slightly tricky problem, but that's how you read this one to see that this is really just an is over of or a PBR type of problem, right? So the idea is that the tax is 8% of the price. And technically what word follows the percent? Of. That's the idea. Okay? So this type of a problem can often be either or on a test. Because I could ask you, what was the value, what was the final price of this item with tax? In which case then you have to figure out both the actual original price and then figure out what the final price is with tax. Okay? So, in this case, what's the is and what's the of?
1920 is the is.
1920 is the is. Why is it the is?
Because that's the percent portion of the whole.
It's the percent portion of the whole. It's the portion. The whole is the actual price. Do we know what that is?
$24,000.
We haven't gotten there yet. And we use that to generate what the actual price is going to be, right? So x is going to be 100 times 192 divided by 8, which gives us
24,000.
the 24,000. And again, folks, remember, this is the price before the tax. If I technically wanted the price after tax, what would you guys do?
Add one.
Yeah, add the tax back in, okay? So realize that this is one of those things that taxes are something that is calculated as a percentage of the original price. That is over of, but then the actual final price is the increased portion where you add it back. All right. Well, if you are happy with your Chapter 6 homework and you want to turn it in, I would love to have it. If you want more time, I understand. I will give you until Monday to turn in the Chapter 6 homework, so don't worry about it if you are not done yet. Just make sure you give it to me on Monday. Thanks. Okay? Okay, so now, back to Chapter 7. What did we do last time, folks, in our 10 or 15 minutes that we had Monday?
Terminology. That's
We
all we did.
did some terminology. What were the terms that we cared about, folks?
MSRP.
MSRP. Technically, what we are going to use in this chapter, folks, is we're going to call it the list price. Okay, please realize that that is what retail businesses call the MSRP, is the list price. And if we are the retail business, what does the list price represent? Again, remember, we're the business, we're not the buyers. I mean, we are kind of, but
It represents the retail price.
your retail price. But since we are the retail owner, that represents revenue, right? It's what we're selling the item for, right? Right. We own the retail business. So when we sell this stuff at the MSRP, it's the money that we're going to collect, right? The net price. What's the net price, folks?
List price minus the trade discount amount.
And so what is that going to be?
What the seller pays to get the item.
Yeah, it's what we pay to get the item, right? It's what we actually paid to get it, right? So normally, what would we call this in the business setting, right?
Cost.
Cost, exactly. And then last but not least, our trade discount amount. And technically, what's the trade discount amount?
Negotiated discount on the list price.
Yeah, it's discount on the list price that gives the net price. In other words, it's what you subtract from the list price to find out what the net price actually is, right? And so the basic formula that we're going to use when we work in this particular chapter looks like it's a really hairy, scary formula, right? Because it's got all these words floating around into it. But it's really as simple as profit equals revenue minus cost. It is the basic number one equation to run a business. And the hope, of course, is that your profit is always a positive number. Because when it's negative, it's bad. All right, and then remember that we sort of ended it at the very end the last time with this quick little calculation that we use when you go to negotiate what your trade discount amount is. Again, remember the amount is technically negotiated. You do not negotiate the amount. What you negotiate is the rate, is the percent discount that you get, right? And note that the discount is always a percentage of whatever the list price is. Okay? So they are going to say, you're going to sell it for this much money. We're going to take a percentage off of that amount and make you pay us that much for it. The difference between those two, your profit, right? So this is the big number, folks. That is negotiated. And the bigger a percent discount rate you get, the more profit you make, right? And again, remember, in the retail business, theoretically, the retail business owner does not set the price. That's given to them by the manufacturer. The manufacturer says you will sell these smartboard erasers and smartboard pens for $50 each, right? And that's probably not too far from the truth. But then they have monopoly on the smartboard pens and erasers, and they're the only ones making it, so they don't want you to buy a whole bunch of them for cheap. They want you to buy a fixed amount so they can make a fixed amount and guarantee large profits from the small amount of work that they have to do. All right? All right, so set the table. Now let's actually do a problem where this actually happens, right? So let's suppose that I'm doing these smart pens, okay? Right? Oops, I'm blue. Let's suppose that I order 50 smart board pens at whatever. And again, so I'm a retail shop that's selling these pens, right? I'm not the school. This is a retail business. At let's say they're $50 MSRP. And let's suppose that I get was I a good negotiator or a bad negotiator, folks?
Bad.
Bad? Okay, so I get a 12% trade discount. And what I want you guys to tell me is, what's the list price, what's the net price, and what's the trade discount amount, right? And this is the way most of the problems in Chapter 7 are going to go. Note that in the homework problems, they won't ask for all three of those. They'll ask for one or two or three of them, right? Variations on the theme.
Do you have to convert the decimal, the percentage
Oh, yeah.
to a decimal?
Well, I mean, you have to calculate what the trade discount amount is correctly, if that's what you mean. Okay, so first off, folks, one of the things that is slightly misleading about these sorts of things is that this is an order, okay? Think of it as an invoice, all right? In this invoice, what am I ordering?
Pens.
Pens. Technically, what is the price of the invoice?
$50.
What is the price of the invoice, though?
The
50 times 50, okay? You are not going to calculate the invoice on a per pen basis, right? This is an entire order of 50 pens. So technically, what is the price of the entire invoice? I know that this is misleading because you see list price and you see $50 and you think, sweet, I'm done. No, right? It's an invoice-based process. And so in this case, you sold, or you're going to sell 50 smartboard pens for $50 each. You must multiply them together. Okay? So the list price of this order is the full $2,500. And again, what does this number represent to me, the owner of the business?
Income.
Income, right? It's what I'm going to sell the 50 pens for when I have finally sold all 50 of them, right? I will have $2,500. Now, what am I going to calculate next? It would be nice if we could go straight to the net price, but can I?
The discount is 12%.
12%, so it's relatively easy to do that next. How would I calculate what the trade discount amount is?
Take 12% times 2,500.
Take 12% times 2,500. How am I going to do that? 0.12 times 2,500. How much of a discount did I theoretically get?
300.
Again, what does that $300 represent?
Loss
Profit.
to the business.
Cost.
No, you were right first.
Profit.
The profit on the sale of the pens once I have sold all of them. Because technically, how much am I going to pay for these 50 pens? $2,200, right? This is how retail businesses work, folks, okay? On a per invoice basis, you're going to have a list price for the items. And the list price is not what you pay for it, it's what you're going to sell it for. That's the idea. And then they're going to say, here's your discount, whatever it is. Again, it's based on the percentage. If you were a good negotiator, this would be more like 18 or 20%. Well, never 20, but more like 18 or 19%. Calculate the percentage of your discount, subtract to figure out what your net price is. This is how much you will pay the manufacturer of these pens so that you can put them in your store and people like me can walk in and say, oh, I need 2 of those, and pay you $100 for them. Okay? Not bad? Okay, that's pretty much how it goes. Now, unfortunately, folks, in order for my business to get those pens, is the manufacturer right next door?
No.
So what has to happen?
You have to pay to ship them.
Shipping. First rule of shipping, folks. Shipping is never discounted. Okay? Technically, and again, this is technically, when you order things in a retail wholesaler or retailer manufacturer arrangement, the shipping is always done by a third party. And the third party is technically an entirely different entity. And so if you have negotiated a trade discount between the manufacturer and the retailer, that has nothing to do with the person shipping your goods, okay? In theory. Now, those rules have been relaxed over the last 6 or 7 years just because we've had more business-friendly government negotiations going on lately. In other words, regulations have started to get released on how this business arrangement works. But the idea is that technically, folks, shipping is supposed to be separate from manufacturer and wholesaler. Okay? So in other words, if you're a car dealer, when the cars get shipped to you from Detroit, it's not Chrysler or Ford or whoever that's shipping you the cars, right? It is some totally different company that does the shipping because they're not supposed to be in on the deal that you two have between your dealership and the car manufacturer. It's totally separate, right? And there's a whole lot of graft and cheating that can go on if you allow that to happen. And if you've looked at the cost of shipping over the last couple of years, you probably have noticed that overall shipping costs have been extremely wildly fluctuating from year to year. And that's because businesses are hiding costs inside of shipping and reducing their tax burdens. It's a very tricky way to do nasty business. It's completely unethical, so I'm not going to teach you how to do it. But It's totally going on. And again, you have to dig to see it. But, I kind of close my ears and hum Mary Had a Little Lamb whenever I think about it, right? Okay, so, anyways, you do not give any discounts on shipping. Now, there are two methods of shipping. Yeah, I can spell it. That's point. FOB shipping point. And give yourself room to explain. FOB destination. Okay, so your shipping will be one of those two. And basically it's pointing out who pays for it, right? And technically, since there's two people in this arrangement, it's either the buyer or the seller, okay? So, first off, what does FOB stand for? It does not stand for fob, and it's the sort of thing you use to get into your car without having to unlock the doors, right? Freight, good. First word is freight.
Freight for borders.
On board. Freight on board. So this type of shipping actually was created back when trains were first getting used most, and so the terminology is sort of based on train shipping. So it totally relies on any kind of shipping now, whether it's large ship or truck or train or plane. They're all the same. They all say FOB. Okay. So technically, it stands for freight on board. But what I like to tell students is that if you change the words just a little bit, it'll actually tell you who's paying. Okay? What I like to tell students is don't think of it as freight. Think of it as free. And that will tell you who is paying for the shipping. If it is free at the shipping point, who pays for the shipping?
The receiver.
The receiver or the buyer, right? And so FOB destination, if it's free at the destination, at the shipping point is where we'll pay for it. This is where the seller pays shipping.
Weren't we the buyer? Just
Yes.
a second ago?
Yes, we are the
So then
buyer.
it wouldn't be free for us if we're the buyer.
Well, if we're the buyer, then it's free for them, right? The buyer, us, is actually paying for it. Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I was just confused about which side we're on.
Yeah. Again, it's the whole point of this is that it works for any kind of a relationship, whether it's retail, wholesale, or regular, non-regular. If it says FOB shipping, it's basically saying that wherever it's being shipped to is the person who's going to be paying for the shipping, and that's the person who bought the item, right? Because that's when you buy something, you have to have it shipped to you, right? In theory, you're not both the shipper and the buyer. That would be weird. Again, but that can happen nowadays, folks, and that's another way that companies cheat. Right, is they actually buy things from themselves and then ship it to themselves and pay themselves for it, and then they can hide revenue that way. It's real tricky. That's a great accounting trick. You should ask.
Isn't that
you
money
should-
laundering?
Yeah, it is same thing. It's totally legal, but it's definitely something that's done. Right. So what a company will do is they'll create a sub company that's not a real company at all, but it's basically a subsidiary of their own. As long as it has its own tax identification number that represents it as being a different entity, it can buy things from itself.
So
Isn't
what
that
are you
another
teaching
form of-
us?
Isn't that another form of, like, I was actually talking to my roommate about this. Isn't that another form of creating a monopoly? If there's, like you're a manufacturer, you're buying parts from factory A, B, and C, and then you buy A, and then you buy B, and then you buy C, and then you're making all the parts and selling them to yourselves and creating the final.
Yeah, I mean, that's just vertical. That's vertical purchasing. It can lead to a monopoly, but that's only if when you buy the parts makers, you refuse to sell to anyone else.
Oh,
Right. And usually you don't do that, right? Because you're always trying to make as much money as possible. So if somebody wants to buy stuff from you, you're like, oh, really? Sweet, I'll sell it to you. You sell it to them for profit, of course.
Well, and that was the point. You can sell the parts to yourself much cheaper and
Oh.
charge others,
Oh,
and then
yes, of
so
course. Yes.
so you're-
Absolutely.
you're
That's
writing-
what definitely
you're writing
leads
off-
to.
you're
That's
writing off
definitely.
that you're selling it to yourself at the same price, and then you're
Oh yeah, so then you can charge less and undercut all of your competition? Yes, very common, right? Theoretically, that's also against the rules, but again, with the deregulation that's going on in business, that's becoming less of a problem. That's why you're seeing a lot of mid-sized businesses die, because the large ones are being able to undercut them, and not because they're necessarily better at producing, but because they bought the supply chain.
well, yeah, they're just buying out their
Yeah.
competitors.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. All right, so anyways, let's do a problem with shipping inside of it, okay? And these are the sorts of things that the book loves in the homework problems, folks. So please bear with me. I will not do this to you on the test. On the test, I will be very obvious about shipping, okay? But in the book, for whatever reason, it is like shipping happy, so be ready to deal with shipping, okay? So, let's suppose, we'll make it a generic problem, right? So let's say, so my business orders, and let's make it simple this time. Let's suppose it orders $1,500 of goods. So whatever, I don't care what the goods are, right? It's just $1,500 of stuff, right? This includes a $200 shipping charge. Note. What does that mean, folks? What does this includes a $200 shipping charge mean?
You have to subtract the 200 from the 1,500 to get the 1,300.
Yeah, I really didn't order $1,500 worth of stuff. I really only ordered $1,300 of stuff, but then I had to pay $200 of shipping. Again, this is how you cheat the system, right? Because if you leave the list price as $1,500, you can actually pretend like you have $1,500 of material, right? Even though 200 of it was shipping that's not included inside the. Again, you get the point, right? Let's suppose that let's suppose I negotiated well this time. I get an 18% trade discount. And so now I want you guys to tell me the same three things. Tell me list price, trade discount amount, and net price. And again, like I said, folks, the book loves these type of problems, so be ready. Okay. So technically, folks, what's the list price?
1,300.
And could you write $1,500 there?
No.
Yes. You'd be lying, but it's actually okay. Whichever way you do it is actually business-wise okay. Okay? I'm happy with either way you do it, but just be careful. Okay? So let's suppose we're ethical business people. We say $1,300. Steve?
Well, because now why wouldn't you pass that on to the consumer, man? The shipping part of that. So why wouldn't it be like your total invoice is $1,500? I'm gonna split that up, so that $1,500 is covered.
That can be something you actually negotiate with nowadays in your trade discount amount negotiations with your wholesaler retailer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, technically that has to be done under the table though, because whenever you include shipping in pricing, technically you're breaking the law.
Huh.
Technically, okay. I mean, you can pass shipping on to it cost-wise, but
Another way.
yeah, it has to be done in a different way. It has to be done in a different way. Okay. So technically, then, folks, what's going to be our trade discount amount?
1,500.
Well, how much do we get?
18%.
18%. Well, what is that?
1%
Okay, good. So do it, right? What's 0.18 times 1,300?
234.
All right, now here's where you have to be careful. Technically, what's the net price? What do I actually have to pay? And how did you get that? But then what did you have to do after you subtracted the 234? don't forget you still owe the $200 of shipping, right? That has to be on the payment for the invoice in the end, guaranteed, okay?
What is that before the 200? Plus sign?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You have a $34 profit?
Didn't seem like worth the work.
Was it worth the work?
And this is why this is why then you look for the cheapest shipping cost out there, right? Because the shipping is actually going to come out of your profit, right? So hopefully, theoretically, you don't have to pay for the shipping, right? Hopefully when you negotiate with them, you can say, hey, by the way, part of the negotiation is you're going to give me 18% and you're going to pay all the shipping. That can be part of your negotiation, and very often is, right? So then they don't have to worry about shipping at all in the retail business. And most retail business owners don't want to have anything to do with the shipping, right? They just don't. And so they'll often say, hey, give me a 6, 7, 8% trade discount, and you deal with the shipping. They'll take a very, very, very small profit margin to not have to deal with anything other than run their store, right? That's the way retail business tends to work. Again, you can negotiate anything, though. That's the cool part about business in America, folks. You can do lots of interesting things. And whether it's legal or not is entirely up to you. And, the SEC, if they find out. All right? But note, this is a very classic type of problem. Please note that sometimes the business will say that my business order is $1,500, and then it just says there is a $200 shipping charge that I owe. So that it's actually not a part of the list price to begin with. Just make sure you read carefully and determine whether this $200 is a part of that or separate. Okay? Those are just, again, like I said, the book does enough of those that I'm going to warn you about it. Okay? I will be very explicit. I will say, make sure to add $100 of shipping at the end. And you will. Okay? Alright, so anyways, that's the shipping side of things. Alright, so do you think that there's only one way to get a trade discount? No. So can you think of other ways that a person who's ordering stuff from a manufacturer might get added discounts?
Bulk, if they buy in bulk.
Okay, good. So here we go. Let's see. Can you get additional discounts? The answer, of course, is yes. And one of those is bulk purchase, right? So they may tell you that you negotiated for a 16% trade discount, but then they'll say, if you order more than 100 units, we will always tack on an additional 2% discount, right? Can you think of anything else that would drive potentially an additional discount?
Discontinued items.
Okay. So, inventory closeout. So they send you a notice saying, we will add on an additional 1% discount if you order any of these items because we are not going to produce any more of them after this. And therefore, if you can, when you sell them, great, we're done, but then they're all gone, right?
Sale. Like sales.
That's the whole point in an MSRP, or in a, this kind of a relationship. There are no sales.
Contract.
Damaged goods.
Usually that's handled in a different manner.
What about introduction of new products or something?
Okay, so maybe new products, right? So if you think of the type of retail shop to be like a trinket store, right? That's normally selling necklaces and earrings, and then the manufacturer says, "Oh, by the way, we're now starting to create necklaces. Would you like to order some necklaces and try to sell those as well?" And you say, "We will throw in an additional 3% trade discount." Then you're like, "Cha-ching!" and then you're in, right? So another one is time of order.
No,
When is most of the sales in this country made?
Christmas.
Christmas. When is most manufacturing done?
Year round.
all year round, right? The whole point of manufacturing is that they don't want to only produce during certain periods of time. Then it's really hard to have a workforce, right? To have a solid workforce, you have to have them working year-round pretty much all the time. And so what a lot of businesses will do will say, hey, if you make an order in January, February, March, we'll throw in you an extra 2-3% trade discount. Because now it's your problem to store it until Christmas instead of mine. Okay? Again, all of those sorts of things. And again, this is totally illegal, but you can do it.
I was gonna say.
If you, there will be some businesses that basically say, if you use our preferred shipping company, we will throw you an extra 0.5% trade discount amount as well. Again, that's totally legal, folks. You should not do that. But do you think it happens?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Duh. Right? And there's lots of manufacturers out there who have cousins who run shipping companies. And how does the manufacturer keep his cousin in business? Give his businesses a 0.5% trade discount to use his cousin, right? Even if he sucks, at least he's not working for you. All right, so anyways, there's lots of different reasons. Now, the key to all of these additional discounts, folks, additional discounts are chained, not added. Does anybody know what that means?
If they're linked into another cost of some sort?
No, not quite. This is sort of like the Kohl's experiment, right? How many of you ever gotten the 30% off Kohl's discount coupon in the mail? Of course, right? Right? And when you go to Kohl's, where's the first place you go shopping when you're looking for clothes? You go to the 70% off rack, right? Because if there's something in there, you want to buy it from there first, right? Because it's 70% off. Well, if you've got a 30% coupon and it's 70% off,
It
what's
doesn't equal a
But
hundred.
no, you take 30% off of the 70%.
that's a chained discount. That's what chaining means, is that you don't add the discounts, but you apply them one after another. Okay? So the reason why you can't just walk into Kohl's with the 30% off coupon and grab the 70% off rack and just leave the store is because those are chained discounts. It's 70% off and then 30% off. That's the way all of these discounts work as well. So if you get a 16% trade discount and then get a 2% bulk discount and a 3% time of order discount, it's not 16 plus 2 plus 3, but 16 and then 2 and then 3% discount. Just like the Kohl's experiment, right? So don't go into Kohl's and try and take the entire 70% off rack. It doesn't work. They will arrest you. Because I've seen someone do it. All right, so
Oh my.
there was a day where I was in a super huge line for a return to Kohl's, and one of the people came out to me and was chatting with me, and who was working the floor, and I was like, what's the most interesting thing that's ever happened to you here? And that was his story. He's like, somebody came in once with a 30% off coupon and went to the 70% off rack and literally tried to roll it out the door. They did!
Oh my god.
I was like, oh, sweet! What did you guys do? Like, we actually tackled him to get him to stop, right? They didn't press charges or anything. They just sort of explained to them how percentages work. Anyways. All right, so let's do one of those. And I'm going to show you how it looks on invoices when you do these sorts of chain discounts, all right? So let's suppose that my business orders, let's keep it simple, let's say $1,000 of stuff. Goods, whatever, call it whatever you want. Whatever retail business we're running, right? Jewelry, shoes, whatever, okay? I get a 16/3/2 discount. This is how they indicate you have additional chained discounts on top of your normal trade discount, okay?
they always gonna work from the highest percentage to the lowest? Or-
No, not always.
Okay.
It kind of depends. Some businesses will actually always make it from highest to smallest. I always will because it's really hard for me to not do that because when numbers aren't in order I get jumpy. But it doesn't matter. These could be 16, 1, a half, 3,
Well,
6.
let's say you go in with a coupon from Kohl's that's 50% off, and you go to the 30% off rack. You're going to take that 30% off first, and then take the 50% off the 30%.
Order doesn't matter. You're going to see why here in a short minute.
Well, the higher percentage off the higher number. would
Nope,
be-
doesn't matter. You'll see why in a minute.
Okay.
Bear with me. Okay? So, alright, so, how would we go about figuring out what the net price is for this particular order? All I want to know is net price, right? Okay, 1,000 times 0.16, right? What's 1,000 times 0.16? I'll do it, 160. What do I do with that 160?
Take it off the 1,000.
Take it off the 1,000. I'm down to 840. I know, we'll get there. Okay, yes, you can multiply by 0.84. We will do that next. Okay, now, what do you do with the 840? Times 3%, right? What's 840 times 0.03? 2520. What do I do with the 2520?
Subtract that from 840.
Subtract that from 840. What is that? 81480. And then last but not least,
Times the 0.02%.
times 0.02%. What does that wind up being? 1629.6.
16.296.
16.296. What are we going to round that to?
16.3.
1630. What do I do with the 1630?
Subtract it.
Yeah. 814.80 minus 1630 for our final price of whatever that works out to be. 798.50. Do you think we're going to do that every time we have a chain discount? No way. No way in Hexer, folks. Alright, but that's doable. You can always do it that way, right? I had a student once who didn't want to learn any of the shortcuts and did everything the long way every time. Their life was a mild form of hell. They did not do very well in the class, but they tried very hard to never take any of the shortcuts I'm going to show you right here. Alright? Folks, if you take 16% off of the price, what percent of the price did you pay?
84%.
84%. What is 1,000 times 84%?
840.
If you get a 3% discount, what percent of the price are you paying?
97%.
Note, all I'm doing is getting compliments, folks, right? The numbers are adding up to 100, all right? Guess what 840 times 0.97 is.
814.8.
What's the complement of 2%?
98.
And guess what happens when I take 814.8 times 0.98?
798.
that's how you should really do discounts, folks. You should actually never really use the percent discount when you're working with things unless you need to know what the dollar amount of your discount is, right? The way you take discounts, instead of multiplying and subtracting, do the subtraction first by getting your complements, and then you just have to multiply, right? So the whole idea is that when you get this particular question, the answer is not a big, huge step. It's just net equals 1,000 times 0.84 times 0.97 times 0.98, and you can do it in one step. So you didn't even have to multiply each one of those one at a time. You can do all three of them in one step, right? So if you just multiply all four of these numbers together, you will get to the final answer of 798.50. Done. Now granted, 798 probably 0.4496 or something like that. You have to round up or something like that. But that's the way you deal with chain discounts. Use the complements. And Alicia, this is why it doesn't matter what order you do it in, right? Because when you multiply numbers, does it matter if I do the 2% first or the 3% first?
I mean, my logic would say that if you take a larger
You think it makes a difference, but now you see why it doesn't, right? Because to get the answer, all you're really doing is multiplying four numbers. And does the order matter when you're multiplying numbers? Nope. So if you take a 50% off and then a 30% off, or a 30% off and then a 50% off, it's going to be the same thing, right? Now, it's not going to be 80, but it's close to it.
Oh.
Right. Not bad? Okay, so that's the way chain discounts work, okay? So now let's do one without all the rigmarole behind it. We'll just do the shortcut, okay?
Marshall?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just did that and did it backwards and multiplied the higher percentage first, and it came up with 774.06.
Then you mistyped it.
You did something wrong. Because I did it too, and I got the right number, so I don't know.
So let's do it for this example now, folks. And this time, just give me net price. Well, give me list price and net price. And this time we're going to do it the shortcut technique, or the more traditional technique of dealing with trade discount rates. Okay? So one of the things that I expect you guys to do from now on is that anytime you get one of these problems and you see this string of numbers followed by a discount, that means that you have a chain set of discounts. What are you going to do to each one of these numbers right off the bat? Yeah, get the complements, right? 85, 95, 98. Just be careful and don't tell me it's 80. Every now and then somebody reads this 2 and reads it as 20. Not exactly sure why, but it's happened enough times that I warn you, don't do that. Okay? So, technically, what's my list price?
Is that the 1,500?
1,000.
50,000?
Yeah. However much we're ordering. And now what are we going to do to get the net price in one step?
Multiply by 0.85 and then
0.85 times 0.95 times 0.98. That's all it takes. One quick step. So what did you get when you multiplied those four together?
$11,870.24.
870.25.
$11,870.25.
$11,870.25. Technically, folks, what's my trade discount amount? What would you do? Yeah, you just subtract the two, right? So I mean, don't forget the basic stuff, right? I mean, if you wanted to know what was going to be the profit from the sale of this $15,000 worth of stuff, you guys would say, oh, well, it's the difference between these two, $3,129.75, right? All right, not bad? Okay, now, what this gives us is a new piece of information that I'm going to potentially ask for, okay? The product of all of these complements, folks, has a special name, okay? It's called the net price equivalent rate, okay? And it's just the multiplication of the decimals without the actual money, okay? So technically, folks, in this problem, what was the net price equivalent rate?
85, 95, 98.
Yep. Multiply them. Multiply them on your calculator. 0.85 times 0.95 times 0.98.
0.79135.
The idea, folks, is that this one number, if you take this number and multiply by 15,000, it gets you to the net price. Okay? And that's why they call it the net price equivalent rate. It's the number you use on the list price to give you the net price. Okay? It's just a number that you can use so that you can work with a single digit instead of a product of 3, 4, or 5 different numbers, right? So if there were a whole bunch of trade discounts up inside that chain, you might want to just multiply them all out and get one number to work with at a later date, okay? Because you may have multiple invoices with the exact same trade discount, so you want to calculate this value one time and then just work with it there forward. Perfectly okay sort of thing to do, all right? Now, the cool thing about this is that there is another rate that is associated with this. And I apologize for the names, but again, this is what they were called initially by the business community when they were made or dreamed up to some degree. And so, the other thing that we will talk about is the single equivalent discount rate. The cool thing about the single equivalent discount rate is that it is just the complement of the net price equivalent rate. So these two things are completely related. They are complements of each other, okay? They add up to 1, or they add up to a whole. Think of it as 100%, right? So in theory, the single equivalent discount rate would be equal to 1 minus 0.79135. Excuse me. That would be 0.20865. And this is the way that you write all of your discounts as one number. So remember, I was getting a 15%, then a 5%, and then a 2% discount. The actual discount that I got was 20.865%. So it's how you take a chain discount and write it as one number. Okay? And that's why they call it the single equivalent discount rate. Okay? So in other words, you did not get a 22% discount, folks. You do not just add these numbers, right? You can't add 15, 5, and 2. You have to do this little menagerie in order to figure out that it's 20.865%. And again, it's the same reason that when you go into Kohl's, you can't just walk off with the 70% off rack, right? You can't add your percentages together. It takes a little bit of work to figure out what they actually are. Okay? Yes? Okay. So let's try another one then. So let's suppose that, let's suppose I order $50,000 of goods. I get a, say I get an 18.61 discount. And let's suppose that I also owe $100 of shipping. Okay? So I'll throw some shipping in there just so that you remember to not forget. Sounds like I'm saying the same thing twice, but okay. Now I have given you two new pieces of information that you now know how to calculate. I may now ask for them, right? So in this problem, I am now going to ask you to tell me what is the list price. I'm also going to ask what is the net price equivalent rate. Please note that I'm asking for these numbers as rates, not as percents. So just leave them as the decimal that you get. Okay, don't change them to percents. Even though they technically represent a percent, don't do it. Then I'm going to ask for the net price. Then I'm going to ask for the single equivalent discount rate. And the trade discount amount. So I'm asking for all 5 pieces of information that are available to you on this invoice when you make this particular purchase. Okay?
I think you have net price on there twice.
I have net price and net price equivalent rate.
Net price is right below equivalent rate.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
above it.
So these here,
There's
how about I
one
do
net
this?
price, and there's one net price equivalent rate.
There we go. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
There you go. So technically those are the divisions, right? So there's list price, net price, equivalent rate,
Okay.
net price. So they're,
Gotcha.
and these two are extremely related. That's why they kind of have the same name.
Okay.
That's the whole idea. Okay? Okay, so what are you going to do with that 18/6/1?
Compliment.
Uh-huh. Doesn't it look nice? I think those numbers are well rounded. I gave you a compliment. Sorry, math humor. Okay, so what I'm going to write over 18, 82,
94.
94,
99.
99. All right, so technically, folks, what's my list price?
50,000.
50,000. What is my net price equivalent rate?
0.763092.
And how did you get that?
I took 0.82 times 0.94 times 0.99.
Sorry, what was that number again?
0.82, 0.94, 0.99 equals 0.763092.
763092.
3092.
Okay. Please note, folks, do not round that number at all. Okay? Keep all of the decimal points in your rates. If you've got 8 decimals, I don't care. Keep every single number. All right? Never round a rate. Period. All right? Dollar amounts, round. Rates, just leave them as is. Okay? So, now, how do I get the net price, folks?
50,000 times 0.763092.
Exactly. And that's why you calculate that net price equivalent rate. Because then you just take it times the list price, bam, there. So what's my net price?
$38,154.60.
60 cents? Okay, so technically, what is my single equivalent discount rate? Yeah. 1 minus 0.763092. Punch it in your calculator. 0.236908. And again, just leave it like this, okay? Technically, yes, it means 23.6908% off. But don't write it as a percent. Just think of it as a good old regular decimal and I will be happy. And then last but not least, what is your trade discount amount? And there are two ways that you can calculate this. What's one way? Take the list price, subtract the net price, right? Remember that the trade discount amount is always the profit, right? So it's revenue minus cost, right? That's one way of doing it. 50,000 minus 38,154.60. The other way you can do it, folks, is if you have a discount of this percentage, to figure out what your discount is, just multiply this by your list price. And the cool thing about it is that those two numbers had better be the same. It's actually a nice checking mechanism if you would like to make sure that your numbers worked out okay, right? Because those two things had better be the same. $11,845 and 40 cents. All right.
You didn't do anything with that $100 shipping.
Oops.
What do I have to do here at the very end to make sure that I don't waste the $100 of shipping? Where do I put the $100? Where does it go?
It's under your net price.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's a 4, I swear. So again, this is why you got to remember to do the shipping, because I totally forgot already by the time I got done there.
Wouldn't that change the equivalent discount rate and the trade discount rate?
You got to work those off of the same numbers, though.
Okay.
Technically, both of them should be $100 less, but then they won't add up correctly. All right.
It's gonna affect, it wouldn't affect how much you're paying your supplier for
Right.
the product. That's gonna stay the same, which is coming out of your profit.
Yeah. All right, so not bad. Okay, so give me 5 more minutes. We're not going to get too far into this, but we got to at least get there. All right. When you guys order these things from your manufacturer, when does your manufacturer want you to pay?
Before they get it? Before they send it?
Yeah, they want it now. When do you want to pay for it?
If you're paying, never.
Never. Yes, it would be nice, but that's what jail was made
Like
for.
Walmart pays 30 days after.
30 days is usually what they give you. Sometimes you can get 60, sometimes you can get 90. So you want to wait as long as possible, obviously. Your manufacturer wants you to pay as soon as possible. What does your manufacturer do to try and tempt you into paying early?
Give you better discounts.
Give you additional discounts. Hey, what do you know? Since this is the discount chapter, did that surprise you? All right, so early payment, or what the book calls cash discounts. I don't know why they call it cash, but whatever.
Because they don't have to write it out in books.
In theory, very true. All
I
right.
mean, a lot of places, you go to Chicago and you get a dentist or an eye doctor and if you pay cash, you can get a discount.
Oh yeah, very true. Yeah, definitely. But normally, when you're working in their wholesale and retail business, they're not going to care whether you. Well, everything's an FTO at that stage, anyways. It's a file transfer, so you're getting the cash instantly, anyways, right? So, anyways, early payment discounts. These are the terms of an invoice. Okay? So when you talk about the terms, it's just basically what sorts of a discount can you get for paying a little bit early. Okay? Note, folks, that there are 3 flavors of early discounts. And each one of them, again, you negotiate these sorts of things at the beginning of your relationship, and you keep using it forever once you've negotiated it. But they come in 3 different methods, all right? Standard terms. Terms are based on days after the invoice date. Note, folks, an invoice date is the date that the invoice is created. So that's when the business ships you the goods, they create the invoice and send the invoice off to you through the mail, right? So the goods get shipped with whoever is shipping goods, and the invoice gets sent. Sometimes it gets sent as a fax, so that you get the bill right away. But the shipping, of course, does the shipping show up immediately?
Of course not.
Of course not, right? And so you'll see what this means here in a little bit. You can also use receipt of goods terms. Guess what receipt of goods does? The difference? Yeah. Terms are based on days after receiving goods. So instead of off of the ship date, it's off the receive date. Note that normally, if you negotiate for receipt of good terms instead of standard terms, you will get a much smaller discount, right? If you base it off of the invoice day, then shipping makes a difference, right? If you don't, then shipping doesn't make a difference, and so there's less risk. Therefore, there's also less reward. It's kind of a standard business thing, right?
Well, it's not the buyer's fault if they don't get it right away.
Again, exactly, right? But the whole point is that if you're negotiating these sorts of things, if you try to negotiate using standard terms, you may get up to a 2% discount. If you're using receipt of goods terms, they will probably never give you more than 1% ever.
Well, and why would you do that then?
Well, because you don't want the risk,
Oh,
right? Because you would rather get 2%, right?
right.
But then you may have to pay for goods before you've received them. Do you do that ever? And of course the answer is yes. Every one of you who's bought something from Amazon has paid for it before you've gotten it. Period. Right? This is just a business doing it. Do you think a business does it? You bet. Right? Because if it gives them an extra percent, some businesses live on the difference between 1% and 2% cash discount. Right? So they pay for it sometimes. Oh, right? It's a risk. Right? And then the third type is called end of month terms. Guess what the end of month terms are based off of?
End of the month.
Hey, what do you know? Terms are based off of the end of the month. And again, this flavor is not the same flavor that you think it is, so when we get there, we'll get there. And we obviously don't have any time to go on into these. What I would like to do is to at least give you an example of each one of them, and then we'll be good, okay? Those are standard terms. Those are receipt of goods terms. Those are EOM, or end of month terms. Okay? This is how they look on the invoice. This is literally what they look like. Okay? And the idea, again, is very similar to what we were talking about before with the chain discounts, except that these things are a little bit different. The first number is your percent discount. The second number is the number of days. So you get a 2% discount if you pay within 5 days of the invoice date. If you don't do that, you can also get a 1% discount if you pay within 10 days after the invoice date. N/30 basically means the net is due on 30 days, no matter what. All right. Likewise, down here, the only difference, this is how you denote the difference between standard and receipt of goods, is you'll see that ROG at the end, right? ROG means receipt of goods. You actually have to have that phrase there to tell you that's the term you're using, right? And likewise, guess what EOM stands for? End of month. And again, this is a 1% discount if you pay within 10 days of the end of the invoice month. Okay? And again, we'll get examples of those next week when we finish up chapter 7. Okay? So folks, for Monday, finish up chapter 6. If you haven't, if you would like, start on chapter 7, but I'm not going to assign it until next week. Okay? And again, make sure you get me chapter 6 by Monday, please.